So stop me if you've heard this one before. Without religion, good people would do good things and bad people would do bad things. But to get good people to do bad things, it takes religion. Now, I've got issues with that statement, and maybe one of these days I'll finally get around to making the video that I'd been planning to do for like 2 years on the topic. But in the wake of the current Catholic Church scandal, I mean, I don't even know what to call it at this point, because it's new news that's basically old news, and it's still, yeah. Anyway, this is the quote that keeps coming to mind. This video is going to assume that after a couple of weeks you understand what's been going on with the Catholic Church, because I don't really want to go into too much detail about it, because it's bad enough that it's happening, and that it's been happening for so long, and that it's been covered up, and that it's still essentially being covered up, and there may be more shit. This appears to just be the tip of the iceberg. But what I really want to talk about in all of this isn't so much the horrors that have actually happened, but the horror that surrounds it. This whole notion of all the rage and antipathy going towards the victims, the accusers in the cases where the accusers aren't directly the victims, and people are even more angry at the Pope. They're calling for the Pope to resign as though that's going to suddenly magically fix an issue that's been going on since he was a little boy. But the reality is that, from the looks of things, no matter what happens with the Pope, a good number of the people who actually abused children using the church as resources, and the people who allegedly aided and abetted and sheltered these people, will get away with this. And there's not much we can do, because the church allegedly was heavily involved in the covering up, in the shuffling around of priests. And this is nothing new. This is something Carlin was yelling about in the 90s. This is something that we've heard before. Every last one of us, assuming that this isn't our first day on the internet, has heard stories about Catholics abusing children. Usually jokes about altar boys, because haha, rape is funny apparently. And they can do this because we've given them power. I mean, we as a general sense of the word we, but they're powerful enough as an organization to defy local laws. They're powerful enough to keep this in-house. And they're powerful enough to reasonably expect that they're going to get away with this stuff. And the track record kind of proves that they are right there to believe so. And part of that power comes down to, well, I mean, part of it comes down to the fact that we make so many exceptions for religion in our culture. But the other problem is why it's so huge, because there are so many people who are in the church, so many people who tithe to the church. The church has numbers, it has money, it has all sorts of ways to protect itself, and that power is going to get abused without checks. And there really are no checks in place to deal with something this massive. And the most disturbing thing about this to me is listening to a bunch of people who I would have otherwise considered good going to bat for the Catholic Church. Not all Catholics, to sum it up glibly, to argue that these are just aberrant cases and that there isn't a systemic problem, when clearly there is if the church has gotten involved enough to cover it up. Even if they're isolated cases, this is a problem with the church itself. This is a problem that needs to be addressed. This is a problem that Catholics need to address because, well, they're the only ones in a position to. They're the only ones who can actually take away the power of the Catholic Church by not tithing, by not showing up, by not bolstering their numbers. And yet, here we stand. Children are being harmed, and children are being harmed specifically by people in power and a position of authority over these children, and they're being allowed to get away with it by people with power and authority to do so. And if your first response is to defend the church or to get your back up because Catholicism is under fire, then you are most definitely addressing this the wrong way. And maybe it's wrong to say that it takes religion to make good people do bad things, but religion is certainly facilitating good people justifying bad things, good people being angry in the wrong places over bad things. And as I sit here recording this, I'm reminded of another old saying, that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. And the thing is that they're not even doing nothing. They're actively defending bad actors, people who have done horrible things in the name of the church, under the purview of the church, under the protection of the church. And still, that's not enough to spur people to action. And that is just horrific. Thanks for listening. Amaranth out.